welcome to Wednesday Words Open Mic Poetry Night here at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. We got a great night lined up for you. We've got the bush poet in Baylis there in the background hiding away. We've got George coming in, George Neo, and Skye, of course, myself as well. So we'll get the show underway. Moist, because at least one person I know hates the word.
Who hates the word moist?
I don't know. Anyone who's like the controversy, salted butter popcorn or sweet caramelised popcorn. Because there's a group of people who think that they're right. There's another group of people who also think that they're right. The salted butter popcorn. One group of people thinks the other group of people is wrong. And there's another group of people who think that the other group of people is wrong. They're the sweet caramelised popcorn. Both groups are suffering because due to their attachment to their belief, their desire, their craving that they're right, their mindset, they can't let go or see another point of view. There's a third group of people eating popcorn on the sidelines, laughing and not giving a shit because popcorn's free. They're suffering because they've had enough of both popcorn and they need a drink of water. There's no water. Welcome to popcorn country. Or as Meta AI calls it, I'm not even going to say that. Oh, welcome one, welcome all. I'm Thundercloud and welcome to the hall. Hey, that's a good one. I like that one. I'm Thundercloud, welcome to the hall, welcome one, welcome all. All right, I'll note that one, definitely, and we'll work on that, yeah. It's the beginning of a new poem. I'm Thundercloud, Mum calls me James, washing away the garbage, leaving rainbows after rain. Let's have some fun and linguistic games. It's Wednesday Words, our open mic poetry night, and at the Poetry Hall of Fame. You folks are welcome to have a seat if you want and join in or watch and what. If you need seats, anybody, there's chairs over there. And don't worry about walking in front of the camera because it'll all be edited out later. Now, we've just gone through Anzac Day here, and this was a poem I'm going to start off with that I did, goodness gracious me, last year in September in Nimbin for the Nimbin Performance Poetry World Cup. And I should know it off by heart. Let's all explore love and war, beginning with one story from World War I, the great war to end all wars. Beauty is once around the sun, though our eyes may never comprehend poets sent off to war. Boys given guns and told to kill boys they've never met. It was the year the drought broke. Pests in the wheat silos, silver moon reflects off the lagoon. Black swans have started building nests, marching with packs and rifles. Desert warfare in trenches. Legless farm boys, bullets embedded. There was a mouse plague that year, run across your face in bed. The stars look very clear tonight. Blindfolded in the infirmary, day becomes night, becomes day. Sent home on crutches, lucky hops in the gate. Dog slinks down, snarls at the stranger. Old Bluey got bit by a taipan. Silhouette, gum trees in sunset, crepuscular needles, sun rays. One-legged stockman. Nobody ever thought he'd ride a horse. Whip cracks, dog bark, cattle turn. Rivers high and rising, all those full belly snakes. Beauty is another trip around the sun. Gratitude is an attitude. Poet, farm boy, soldier, one-legged stockman with a whip, billy of tea on the campfire, Johnny cakes and golden syrup flies buzz around the swag, loving this second chance at life. What if love is selfish? Is it? Is loving someone selfish in wanting and needing an external source of happiness? If I'm happy in myself, why would I want or need to be with anyone else if I'm happy in my own company or share my life with anyone else? These are existential questions, of course. I don't deny that people have feelings. I find it difficult to comprehend why anyone would allow their feelings to rule over pragmatism in their dealings. Surely allowing one's emotions and feelings to rule one's life instead of pragmatism and restraint and self-control is a sign of low emotional intelligence. Just a thought. Love, that would be a feeling. The state of unconditional love, that would be a choice of acceptance and respect mixed with allowance, topped with a smattering of care and nurturance and with positive intentions, of course. That state of unconditional love would include appreciation to the power of reverence, joy, serenity, peace, bliss, love thine enemy. That state of unconditional love would be a kind of choice where we can take the most horrible, horrific thing, act, person, and accept it and them and love it or them. It's like that if everything we love dies, then let's love war to death. Make it our friend, love it into non-existence, love it till its very end. What do I mean, love war to death? We're waiting for my grandfather, 4 years old, but he never arrived home. He was T-boned by a drunk. That was 1974, long after he survived the Second World War. I learnt what I love dies, and what I don't like, I'm loath to use the word hate. I couldn't give away my power so easily. What I don't like thrives. War thrives, weapons makers thrive. So if what I love dies, let's all love war to death. Love the lessons from babies dying. And politicians, we love you too. Yeah, let's love Albanese and Dutton. Biden, Harris, Trump, Putin, Zelensky and Xi Jinping. Come on, let's all do it together. Breathe in, feel the love and breathe out. Exhale and send the love. Kim Jong-un's health is in decline. Type 2 diabetes, not feeling fine. The effects of overeating and greed. Kim Jong-un is in need of our compassion and love. Breathe in, deep, inhale, and let the love go. Melinda's also left Bill Gates, He's lonely. He needs our love as well. Come on, let's send him our love. Let's inoculate and vaccinate Bill and release him from his inner torment and hell with our love. Nuclear energy and fracking, Netanyahu's Palestinian genocide, deep state clones, pedo-pollies, pizza eating, the Ukrainian patricide, Australian-made disposable payload drones. What about the little children blown to bits? They were loved, so they took the hits. They were loved to death by their mother, their grandmother, killed in the precision strike, loved to death by their father, who upon returning home found all their lives over. Mother, wife and baby twins apparently posting on Facebook is a mortal sin. Loved to death by their father, who survives, still loves them and cries, and whose eyes will never run dry till he dies. They were loved to death by the IDF. Let's all love the IDF to death. And Hamas. And this mess to death. And then perhaps, tally ho, good chaps, love every shithouse situation WEF, colonisation, globalisation, government, mainstream media, mass media, manipulation, love the deepest, darkest depths of humanity, the darkest depths of depravity, love money. I'm not trying to be funny, but the bees make honey down behind the dunny because we love the bees. Hence that varroa-mite bee disease. We love honey, bee vomit, as I see it. So we need to love feet, currency. The creation on a ledger from thin air, interest on money, that's usury. Excuse me? You know, interest, rent, on money spent. Where they give you a loan with the illusion that you own, but really it's just renting your home. Rodney got it. Did you manage to spot it? Surely shelter, that's a human right. Protection from the cold and dangers of the night. A custodial homestead and you haven't got to buy it, or have it repossessed by the state, or in a war, or if you're late, so late. And love militaries and wars and governments as you would your children and your parents. And most importantly, love and nurture your physical, mental, spiritual health, because that's where true wealth. And there's no one to hold your hand and walk to your death with you except the soul of yourself. So there, that was last year. I did that all from memory back then, but there's no way I would now it's still a bit hard. Anyway, another one I've done more recently, which is not mine, Molly McNutt's Australian remounts. Now, back in World War I, they had the light horse, and they used to send these, dudes on horses into battle with their guns, with bayonets on a horse, and the horses would get shot and what. And so they had to send more horses, which they collected from all around Australia, wild horses there were back in the day. Not so many Brumbies and that now. They were called remounts, these horses sent into battle, sent to replace the dead horses. So this is by Molly McNutt. She was a fairly local poet and she won a prize for this back in 1915. They were calling on poems about the Australian remounts. And a word you may not know, dams, is a female horse, like dams in size, madams in size. Stalwart dams they ran with in the mammoth station paddocks, where the roller circles and the grey-winged ibis throng. Heard the dingoes howling in the lonesome midnight watches and the wonder music of the magpie's morning song. Romped across tussock grass and gambled in the sunshine, smuggled by their mothers through frost-clear southern nights, while in friendly fashion looked the great Southern Cross down on them with its 5 points twinkling midst a host of lesser lights. Whether born and bred amongst the blue New England ranges or in far-flung never-never-land of far-flung saltbush plains, sunny smiling Queensland or the slopes of cold Monaro, ran the blood of gallant sires in all their hounding veins. Fragrant in their nostrils was the breath of gum and wattle. Do they now in foreign lands across the tossing foam? Fancy through the darkness they can hear the mopoke calling, stir in restless slumber at some fleeting dream of home. Puzzled by the strangeness of the war that fate has dealt them, war to them a nightmare they can never understand, tugging up the grey gun stiff and sore and weary through the snows of somewhere or some vast forgotten land, plunging gamely onward though the cruel shells are screaming through the bullets zip, through the rifles crack and bullets zip and thud, winning fame and glory all unknowing and uncaring, craving but the homestead for those leagues of Flanders mud. What a great poem, isn't it? awesome poem. When you, like, one of the bits of advice that I got from Jeffrey, I don't know, a fella, said when you learn into someone else's poem, try to go through each line and really dissect it and understand what each line is, so that when you're giving it as a performance poet, that you're really delivering it like a performance. You're not just reciting it. So yeah, giving you those, those meta language, the body language, plunging, going when I'm tugging up the graveyards, that kind of stuff. So giving them feeling. All right, now that's my couple to begin with. We've got a few people. Have you got anything for us tonight, Skye? Yeah, we've got Ian Baylis here, and of course, I would love to hear Ian Baylis. Come on up.
I'm up?
Yeah.
Okay, well thanks Thundercloud. I could feel the lightning in that performance. Yeah. Might fizzle a little bit more. I'm Ian. I hail from the Moombi Ranges. I've been writing bush poetry for some time now. Never actually performed it. I do a lot of writing, but not a lot of speaking. And recently I've embarked on an idea of going back in time to a place in 1862. It was a station set up in the mountains, a station called Crooked River Station, and I wanted to poetically travel through this station because we've got some rugged country that's been tamed or attempted to be over the years of settlement, and this land has been nurtured and cared for by its original indigenous inhabitants for thousands of years before these events. To apply a Western settlement approach to this vast land took hard, determined men and women. And Crooked River Station tries to depict this wild, exciting era in a poetic journey through bush, with characters of the day entwined in daily plight to conquer the weather, predators, and every other bouncer that their challenging venture would bowl at them. Tighten your girth strap, secure your bit and stirrups, and ride along on this lyrical yet fictive expression of the early Australian bush. My first poem is Crooked River Station. It was up on Crooked River that a station came to be, in amongst the mountain gums, nowhere a grander stand of trees. Sometime in 1862, while droving through those hills, a bloke named Patrick Finnegan thought he'd start a timber mill. But as he built his slab wall hut, he thought of greater things, and Crooked River Station, it began to spread its wings. Perched up in majestic mountains where the wedge-tailed eagle fly, he found a perfect clearing for his selection in the sky. His drover mates, they came to stay, and cattle multiplied. The towns below with mountain beef would always be supplied. Old Joe, a master blacksmith, he came to air his trade. A finer display of metalwork, I'm sure, has not been made. Old Bluey, a long-time saddler, set up to tend the leather. He'd repair the station's riding tack and have it prepared for any weather. The breaker, Tom O'Hara, almost any steed he'd tame. He hailed from County Sligo, and wild horses were his game. The head stockman, a weathered cove, a saddlebag with eyes, but a finer horseman never seen, and this no word of lie. And stock they roamed these towering heights, and fences they were born. The stockmen patrolled upon their mounts, their pathways they were worn, and the Crooked River flowed right through, an aqueous delight that fed the paddocks down below, and thirst was sure to smite. So that's sort of the introductory phase of it, but one of the fellas that is sort of on the station that was sort of forgotten and we sort of put aside, and sort of as you're driving through country New South Wales, 20 or 30 years ago, you saw these entities still there, and what I'm talking about is the station dogs, the sentry dogs that stayed at gates and kept stock from straying and anything from coming in that shouldn't have. And this is called By the Far Gate. On a dusty track at the station's edge, as it made its way down through the mount, stood a hollow log with a faithful dog no stray beast could surmount. The far gate sentry was a tough old boy, part collie and part dingo, his muzzle old and scarred from fights, for toughness was his lingo. He lived his life by the far gate road to ward the cattle off, and waited patient every day, his tucker he would scoff. As the boundary rider brought a rabbit or the tail of a kangaroo, this was his only contact with the motley station crew. For he could have had a better life, mustering cattle with a drover's horse, but his stubborn, brash demeanour set his fate on another course. But I guess it didn't bother him under the Southern Cross alone. He made his home in a hollow log and didn't have to share his bone. And the call of the stone bush curlew makes him howl into the dark. His dreams of times when he was a pup, he would hear his mother's bark. But now his time is taken up to guard the station gate, and his only friend is his rusty chain and his collar as a mate. So basically, I'm developing this. There's a few more there. Do you want to hear any more? Or?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
Of course. Yeah, bring it up.
It's primarily an exercise that is in progress. I particularly like this one. It's a bit of a funny one, sort of thing. So basically, you've got this old guy. He's the station cook, old Jock, and he's not a bad old cook, but in those days they'd eat anything pretty much at the end of a big day. But old Jock, he didn't think he was making enough money out of what he was doing, getting a reasonable wage, probably a couple of bob a month or something like that. But it's called station ale. The station cook, he thought he'd make a batch of ale or two. Old Jock, he was a rascal, wanting silver in his pail. He grabbed some barrels that the station stores had been sent in, and he didn't have no hops at hand, so a brewy style he would begin. No proper herbs he had at hand, just gum leaves and tobacco, some rosemary and ginger from the garden where they grew potato. He procured the horse's barley, and he'd malt it in the kitchen. The yeast that made his fancy bread, some ale would be a pitching. He heard to add some sugar would give his booze a lift, but I think he used a bit too much. Ale making's not his gift. He barrelled it and laid it down, to him a master brew. Alas, blood curling bangs were heard, and the shack side wall it flew. The stockmen almost soiled their beds, and out half dressed they came. They thought they were under attack, were looking for the flame. They saw old Jock, a wandering dazed, oblivious to mayhem. Me bloody shack, it's blown to bits. The curs, I will assail them. But then he saw his brew was gone. The kitchen, it was flooded. His ale had blown to smithereens. The station, it had shuttered. And for the rest of old Jock's days, no brewing he would try. He stuck to cooking what he knew until the day he died. This one I particularly like because I like doing a bit of leather work and that. The old saddler, he was there. The station didn't run well without someone fixing the tack. So this is Saddler's Shack. Over by an old gum tree sat Bluey, the Saddler's Shack. It's where he worked with hide all day, and at night he slept in the back. There were saddle tacks in an old soap tin, wax and thread and horsehair. His leather knife and sewing oil and his pricking wheel were all used with care. For a broken bridle was no threat, and a collar for the draft. Make a brand new saddle for the mare, but through it all he laughed. A happy bloke, old Bluey. Was he crafted his tan beast skin? With his shoulder crease and wad punch, he'd create a masterpiece within. For the tack at Crooked River, he'd make, create, repair. Old Bluey in the Saddler Shack. With leather, he had a magic flair. Thank you.
Well, that was awesome, wasn't it? Well, sort of blown away actually, grateful, in a really positive way. Really good to see someone like sharing their work as it's in progress, to know that there's more to that and that in the future that will develop and there'll be more poems of that particular series and all turn into like a verse novel basically. Yeah. That's exciting because it really does. It's a historical part of our heritage, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so fantastic. I'm really excited by that. Thank you for sharing that with us. And what also impresses me, because one of my things about writing poetry, I tend to sort of sit down, I start, and then I just write until the poem's finished and then it's done, and I really rarely ever go back and edit a lot of stuff until I have to publish it or perform it. Yes, kudos to you, because I need to do more of what you're doing, take an idea and then develop it. Thank you very much. It also reminded me too, I'll give you the name of someone else who can help you with your poetry, someone who's a really good bush poet as far as rhyme and metre goes. All right. Oh, I know what I was going to do. The one that I've been working on, and someone else's, of course. I'll do one before I invite, who would like to come up? George or Skye?
Good.
George?
If you want.
Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, I've been working on this one to remember it and perform it, which I've got it, so get ready. It's called Me and Bill, and it's written by a fella called Francis Kenner. And he was a Queensland politician, a journalist, and a poet. Things you need to know, words you might need to know, vocabulary. Okay, back in the day when they used to cut down the big, huge trees, like a blackbutt tree, they'd have hollow ones, and inside that was called a pipe. What else would you need to know? And they used to cut them, 2 men on either end of a saw, called a cross-cut saw. We were sawing a log, was Bill and me. They called him Bill, but his name was Jim. The timber wasn't working free. To hell with the thing, says I to him. 'Twas a black butt log with a 2-foot pipe and the crosscut jammed, and I says to Bill as I stopped to wipe the sweat off my brow, well, I'll be damned. We were sleeper cutters, was Bill and me, of the hogback sword at 8 pound 10 with 10 bob off for the royalty. And at last the saw stuck tight, and then, says Bill, the splinters inside are stuck in the blasting teeth of the rotten thing. So we pulled and tugged, but it wouldn't buck. And the more we pulled, the more they clinged. Now, Bill was the brains of the partnership, and there wasn't much that he didn't know. So he did a think, and I let him rip, as I always did, for his thoughts to flow. The thing for to do is to crawl inside and to pick the splinters and to set them free. So, into that pipe, which was 2 feet wide, he squeezed himself, did old Bill, did he? A terrible villain, all right sort, was good old Bill, but he had no luck. 'Cause after a bit I heard him snort, I've freed the swine, but I'm damn well stuck. I can't get back. By Christ, said Bill, you must roll her over and saw me out. That log that lay on the side of a hill with 500 feet of slope about. So I cuts a sapling to roll around, while Bill inside that pipe he lay. And so help me Bob, on the sloping ground, the log she makes a breakaway, with a terrible boom and an awful crash, that 10-ton log through the timber flood. You never seen such a horrible smash, and good old Bill in the pipe inside. She was round as a lump with never. She was round as a. She was round as a lump with never. She was round as a roll with never a lump, and a slippery, greasy log she were. And whenever she'd hit a stump, she'd jump for 50 feet in the bloomin' air. The splinters flied from the bloomin' rocks, the trees they smashed. 'Twas an awful sight. I stood and shook in me flamin' socks, and all of a sudden, me breath grew tight. Old Bill's a goner. For good I said, that poor old beggar has smashed the pie. That's the end of him. Bill is dead. And I felt as if I would like to cry. I said, that log when the crick she hits, she'll burst and shrivel old Bill to a rag. So down I goes to gather the bits and fetch 'em home in a sugar bag. And what do you think? Amongst the rocks I see that log a smashed to bits. And there, on a lump of it, smoking his pipe, me good old partner Bill. He sits. It's just me luck, he says to me as I stood and looked surprised at him. There was 50 sleepers in that there tree. Have you got a match in your pocket, Jim? Yes. Yeah, that's a really good one. There's another one I've actually just been started to learn, and it's by a guy called Robert Service, who is actually a Canadian poet. And I have to do it in Canadian voices, and I'm not going to do it tonight, but it's a really good one. It's called The Cremation of Sam McGee. And it's got a bit of a twist at the end of it, like exactly like that poem. So yeah, if you're looking up, we've got the poetry library over there. We've got some Robert Service books over there, 2,500 plus poetry books. And if anyone's got poetry books they want to donate, yes, you out there in YouTube land, give it a thumbs up and subscribe and push that notification bell so you get a ding-ding thing when I put new poetry videos up there, all of that garbage, you know. Yeah, I was supposed to say that, aren't I, if I'm making a YouTube video? I know, right? Yeah. So poetry over there, welcome. And if anyone does have poetry they do want to donate, that's the Australian Poetry Library always takes donations of poetry books of all kinds, and Skye's just been spending the day today putting some of it away and cataloguing it. Yeah. All right. George, Neo, come on down.
Take all the show. I think you defined it rather nicely, James. When you do the poetry and all that, you try and get the meaning behind the song, and that's part of what I want to try to present tonight. I'm actually reading a book on Nana Mouskouri at the moment, and it's her life story. It's amazing the career that she had, but she never wrote any of her songs, right? She had some of the world's greatest poets and songwriters write those things for her. And so I don't feel too guilty about doing somebody else's song, right? And the song that I wanted to present, I'm more into song than poetry, by the way, but I'm not going to sing tonight. The one I wanted to present is based on this little poster, and who's a Led Zeppelin fan here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Not everybody. Okay. We'll just pass that around and put it in front of the camera or something. Yeah. It's the Stairway to Heaven song, and that's more than 50 years old, right? And back in the day when I was pretty young, We weren't interested in meaning, we were interested in the noise, and it was great noise. You know? And so we would play the album, it's the fourth Led Zeppelin album, over and over and over again, until it was plugged into our brain. Right? And, you know, we went along with the words, but we didn't put much into the meaning. Right? And more than 50 years later, what I perceive is there is a lot of meaning in that particular song, right? And the way I've defined it is, it seems to be a prophecy, right? And if you look online, you'll find lots and lots of interpretations of that particular prophecy, and it starts off with. There's a lady who's sure. Now, why is there a lady? There's one interpretation which says it's Mary, Mother Mary, right? But that's might be a little bit too restrictive, because I think it's a universal message rather than just one particular faith, right? And another message says, well, the lady who thinks that all that glitters is gold is actually indulgent. You know, she's a spoiled brat, right? And I didn't quite go along with that one either. So I thought I'd just share my interpretation and see what you think. You know, I've made a video of it, and it's on BitChute on a channel called Televion, which means it is finished. And what I'm referring to there is the age of Pisces is at an end, and there's a new age coming forth. It's supposed to be the age of Aquarius. And, you know, that might just be a semantic, or maybe it's got some deeper meaning. Yeah, it's up to everyone or anyone to make their own interpretation of that. All right, so the only bit of music I thought I'd do is just the introduction to the song, and then I'll launch into some of the meaning. Okay. Okay. I haven't played for a while. Yeah, okay. Goes into, there's a lady who's sure all that glitters is gold. My interpretation is that, why is there a lady? Because being is a feminine attribute and doing is masculine. And of course, are we human beings or human doings? I believe we are human beings rather than human doings. The doing derives from the being, okay? And what I'm saying is, from that perspective, divinity is too good to be true. In other words, when you reach a certain level, you can have, you can be, you can do anything you please without repercussions. But once you get to that level, you also put aside the desire to have everything, right? But if you want the goal, you can manifest it, right? So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. You can do anything you please in the entire cosmos, but then you don't desire it because you know it's an illusion anyway. Anyway, we'll get past that. The next line is, and she's buying a stairway to heaven. And that's a pretty high level of involvement, you could say. In other words, you can have your cake and eat it too. Right? And once divinity and self-worth is realised. It goes on, when she gets there she knows, if the stores are all closed, where am I? With a word she can get what she came for. And my interpretation of that is, why would heaven, the promise of the divine, offer anything less? Right? If we are children of God, and we reach that level where we merge with all that is, then the promise of the divine is you can be, do and have anything you please. So we never really left heaven in the first place, but it's just a game in order for us. It's a journey, that's the important rather than the destination. And what we are doing is taking a journey of remembering, right? And there's two ways to look at the word remembering. It sounds like memory, but becoming a member of the whole once again, right? Because we stepped out of heaven to embark on this journey, and we make our way back, right? And then it goes on, with a word she can get what she came for. Then I would say, and so it is. It's just the way it works out. And then the song goes into, ooh, and she's buying a stairway to heaven. The next line, there's a sign on the wall, but she wants to be sure. And that's prompting, the sign is prompting us to choose head or heart. That is ego, personality, or spirit, soul. Right? There is always a choice in everything that we do in life. And you can either go with the ego, or you can listen to what your heart says, which is connecting you to your soul. Because sometimes words have two meanings. And interpretation I'll put on that is language can get us into a lot of trouble sometimes. One particular word can mean two things, right? Language actually stifles communication, right? Look at the legal system. If you get a legal dictionary, it's entirely different to the common dictionary. The meanings of the words. I should have done some research and gave you some examples, but I don't have any right now. You could say, when we operate from the mind, it's a house of questions. But when you operate from the heart, it's a library of answers. Right? There's a vast difference. And the recommendation is to work through the heart, because then it connects you to your soul, your divine purpose, and can flow from there. Next line is, in a tree by a brook, there's a songbird who sings. A brook in the forest it seems like a very peaceful place to be. And so I interpreted that as somewhere peaceful where you can go within, so that you don't go without. Right? So it's a peaceful place to encounter the infinite. Next line, sometimes all of our thoughts are misgiven. And what I think that's referring to is the outer world distraction and the internal dialogue, because we're always talking to ourselves, and that creates the illusion of reality. Now, you may not agree with all what I'm saying, but that's the way I interpret it. And that outer world distraction is very seductive, it's very addictive, right? But from the teachings I've worked with, all the answers to all the questions you'll ever have, you'll find within. That's open to all of us. Nobody's excluded from that. And then we go on to another, ooh, it makes me wonder. Yes, it really makes you wonder. Yeah. And then we've got, there's a feeling I get when I look to the west. And if it's in the west, that's the sunset. And I'd say that's putting aside the so-called reality, what we call the real world. And in order to look at beyond the illusion of reality into something called truth. Right? So just imagine, truth and reality, are they the same thing? Maybe not. And you have to get past the reality in order to see the truth. And my spirit is crying, believing. That could be a reference to a desire to go beyond the illusion. When one fights the illusion, it actually gives it reality. Right? If you're seeking justice, you automatically bring on injustice. Right? Because what you're saying, when you seek justice, you're saying, there must be injustice out there. And so the universe says, okay, well here's some injustice for you. Right? It's a natural occurrence. Right? So in other words, be careful what you wish for. Right? If you call something out, then you're obviously creating a polarity which has to be balanced. Right? Yeah, more and more people are declaring a living rather than just a life. Rather than the dead status, because the two do not mix. And one of the quotes I got from that was that law is life, whereas scripture, which is the stuff that we write down, or you can call it legislation, is for the dead. Right? If you want to be living, why does it have to be written down? Because it's all within you anyway. Right? We all know at a very deep level what is right or wrong in any situation. And all we have to do is go within so we don't go without. Right, so in my thoughts I have seen rings of smoke through the trees. I'm guessing here, but that could be a reference to clouded vision. Can't see the wood for the trees. And the voices of those who stand looking. That could be urging those with ears to hear and eyes to see. And another chorus, oh, it makes me wonder. And this time it says, oh, it really makes me wonder. Verse 3, and it's whispered the soon if we all call the tune. That to me is the reason why I put the meaning into this song written by Robert Plant and Jimmy Page, who provided the music to it, is that we seem to have reached critical mass. There's a massive change of consciousness which is happening over the last few years in particular, right? And it's building up such a vast momentum. You know, we've gone through some difficult times. You know, particularly the 20th century. It's one of the worst centuries we could have possibly had. And yet, what I perceive in the work that I've been doing is we will never allow that to happen again, right? You know, if we got called up to fight somebody else's war now, well, if we were called up last century, we probably would have gone. If they tried to call us up today, we'd probably say, go fight your own war, right? We're not interested. Right? That's just my perception. You might have a different view, but that's okay too. Right? So critical mass is only a small percentage of the population. It can even be down to 1, 2 or 3%, right? Because the ones that awaken balance the negative energy of the ones that are not awakened, right? So one awakened being can balance the energy of 100,000 people that are not awakened. So you don't need a vast percentage of the population, and it starts sweeping through the population telepathically, right? You don't have to communicate it in gross terms. Well, it helps, right? But you've heard of the 100th monkey syndrome, right? Where if something occurs in a population, well, other parts of the population get the same idea, right? And they take it from there. The next line, then the piper will lead us to reason. And as a result of rising consciousness, we are now following what might be referred to as the piper. Right? And a new day will dawn for those who stand long. It has been a very long journey for mankind. It's been possibly 30 years of suffering and some pretty horrendous stuff, but we're coming through. And I've suggested we're going into a golden age from here, right? It may not happen immediately, it may not happen in my lifetime, right? But the momentum, it's escalating at an incredible rate. It's like a snowball now, which has grown to a big snowball, and when it gets that big, you can't stop it. Yeah. So that's a result of rising consciousness. And it says, and the forest will echo with laughter. It's a beautiful line, that one, and I've interpreted that one as the heavens rejoice, because it's happening. Then it goes on to verse 4. If there's a bustle in your hedgerow, don't be alarmed now. I'd say that means stay calm. See, we're not going to get there just like that. There's still a lot of resistance to the awakening. It's been many, many centuries, and there's still some pretty terrible hot spots around the world, right? But I'm very confident that those will become less and less as the population wakes up. So stay calm, see the illusion for what it is, and less abuse, there is no need to fight. All right? The next line it says, it's just a spring clean for the May Queen. That's the bustle in the hedgerow. And that's an interesting statement. To me, that's natural law cleaning out the garbage. And yes, there's been a lot of garbage over the ages. We're just getting to the point where we're cleaning it out so that we're going to have a much better world from here. Yes, there are two paths you can go by, but in the long run, the two paths are choosing love or fear, unification or separation, collaboration or attack. So choose. I would recommend the love side of things rather than the fear side. In fact, fear is a tool that's used against us to keep us under control, right? And you've probably heard of the acronym, it's false evidence appearing real. You can also turn that around, and so that fear becomes feeling excited and ready. Yeah, we're getting there, okay? The next line says, well, it refers to the choice you're making. There's still time to change the road you're on. In other words, it's not too late. And some of the tools, which I get from the shamanistic world, is control, discipline, forbearance, which is patience, and timing, which is knowing when to act. Right? And a lot of us are acting at the right time now to bring on better times. There's a little saying which goes along with that: don't fight the old, create the new. Right? Because if you're fighting the old, you're actually giving it validity. Right? But if you're creating the new, the old becomes irrelevant. It starts to disappear. The next line is, and it makes me wonder. And then we go on to, your head is humming and it won't go in case you don't know. Right? My interpretation is the ego mind wants control, but it's hallucination. In fact, the ego cannot say, I am not real. Right? Think about that one. Next line is, the piper's calling you to join him. And that to me is gradual awakening through experience and evolution. It's the inner voice that we all have access to. Next line, dear lady, can you hear the wind blow? And did you know? The wind blow suggests that God talks to everyone all the time. The question is, who listens? And the final line of that particular verse is, your stairway lies on the whispering wind. And that could be a reference to all that is and all that is not. The great seen and unseen, the sadness, the laughter, the bitter and the sweet. We look so hard, but yet it is there before us. It always was. Right? We forgot who we are. But that's part of the journey. It's not a coincidence that that's happened. You know, like when you're born, you have no memory of your prior existence, right? But who's to say there is nothing before you're born? Or is there something beyond this particular life? Well, everybody's got an interpretation of that. And then it goes into a fanfare of, it's like a celebration, right? And some of the sound to that. And so the tempo of the song completely changes there, and it's like this is the announcement. I think there's a better word for what it is, where the new is here, right? And it starts off in the words, "And as we wind on down the road." That to me is the journey of life. Right? That's our journey that we're taking. And then it says, "Our shadows taller than our soul." That's so incredibly accurate. The shadow is the domination by the ego, rather than choosing the path of the heart, which connects to the soul. "There walks a lady we all know." So there's the reference to the lady again. It's the referring to the internal voice, the voice of the heart, and is ready to be chosen. And the lady, a reference to the lady again, "who shines white light and wants to show." That seems to be a connection to the spirit, where we shut down the internal dialogue, that's the ego mind, endlessly, ceaselessly talking to ourselves and creating the illusion. Next slide, "how everything still turns to gold." The way I've interpreted that is your life is a magic trick and you are the magician. Right? And that to me is absolute. That's the way things are. And if you listen very hard, the last 4 lines are true revelation. If you listen very hard, and the interpretation of that is that the spirit manifests itself to everyone all the time. It reveals itself to everyone with the same intensity and consistency. But only those who choose to listen are consistently attuned to such revelations. Next line, it goes on from there. "The tune will come to you at last." That to me is aligning your personal will with the divine will. Because when that happens, it's like the musical notes resonate with each other. There's a resonance which takes us to where we can truly go. Next line verifies the oneness of everything. It says, "when all are one and one is all." And that to me is demonstrating experiential oneness. What I do for myself, what I do for another, I do for myself, right? And the eyes are the windows to the soul. And so when you look into the eyes of someone else, you see yourself as a different aspect of yourself, right? And the final line is to be a rock and not to roll. And the interpretation there, to be a rock is to stand in your own power, and so that you don't roll to the whims of others. You become a powerful being within yourself. And that finishes my interpretation. Perhaps you like it, perhaps you don't, but to me it heralds a grand awakening for mankind. And I can go into a lot more detail. If you do look up the Teleon channel on BitChute, it will give you a lot more information on this marvellous transformation of mankind. Yeah, I do want to make a supercharged version of that and put it on YouTube because it might get a lot more hits on that channel.
May I ask you something?
Sorry? Yes, go for it.
Have you ever played the song in reverse?
Sorry?
Have you ever played the song in reverse?
Glenn?
Verse.
Backwards.
Backwards.
Have you played the song backwards?
Yes, there are backward versions of it, and when they've interviewed Robert Plant and Jimmy Page on that, they say it's hard enough to write a song forward, never mind backward. In other
Exactly.
words, it's a lot of bullshit.
Yeah.
I just thought like
They
it might
did
give.
the same with Beatles songs.
Sorry?
They did the same with the Beatles songs, you know, saying they meant things going backwards and that.
You know, I think like there might be a counterbalance for your vision, vision of this.
Look, I've seen those sort of interpretation. Look, there's, like I said, there's many interpretations,
Yeah.
and some, you know, the Christian faith might say the lady is Mary, Mother Mary, and that's fair. You know, that's that works for those people, and that's fine. You know, we don't have to say, oh, you're wrong. Perhaps they are right as well, but in a different way.
All right. Should we
Okay.
get up?
Thank you, James.
Thank you very much, George Dio. All right, what have we got for you now? Me. Well, I got one for you, and then we got Skye's got one for you, or two, or more, or less, or what. Here we go. Let me check this out. What have I got for you? Oh, I know. The Captain of the Bush? Why not? The Captain of the Bush was written by Henry Lawson in 1892. It describes an occurrence of the gangs of Sydney. And so a push was the name of the gangs. As night was falling slowly down on city, town and bush, from a slum in Jones's Alley came the captain of the push. And he scowled towards the north and he scowled towards the south as he hooked a little finger in the corners of his mouth. Then his whistle loud and shrill woke the echoes of the rocks, and a dozen ghouls came sloping round the corners of the blocks. There was naught to rouse their anger, yet the oath that each one swore seemed less fit for publication than the one that went before, for they spoke the gutter language with the easy flow that comes only to the men whose childhood knew the brothels and the slums. Then they spat in turns and halted, and the one that came behind, spitting fiercely on the pavement, called on heaven to strike him blind. Let us first describe the captain, bottle-shouldered, pale and thin, for he was the beau ideal of a Sydney larrikin, and his hat was most suggestive of the city where we live, with a gallows tilt that no one save a larrikin can give. And the coat, a little shorter than the writer would desire, showed a more or less uncertain portion of his strange attire, that which tailors known as trousers, known by him as bloomin' bags, hanging loosely from his person, swept with tattered ends the flags, and he had a pointed stern post to the boots that peeped below, which he laced up from the centre of the nail of his great toe, and he wore his shirt uncollared and his tie correctly wrong, but I think his vest was shorter than should be in one so long, and the captain cooked his finger at the stranger on the curb, whom he qualified politely with an adjective and verb, and he begged the gory bleeders that they wouldn't interrupt till he gave an introduction which was painfully abrupt. Here's the bleed and push me coffee. Here's a something from the bush. Strike me dead, he wants to join us, said the captain of the push. said the stranger. I am nothing but a bushy and a dunce, but I read about the bleeders in the weekly gas bag once, sitting lonely in the humpy when the big wind began to whoosh. How I longed to share the dangers and the pleasure of the push. Gosh, I hate the swells and good uns, I can burn 'em in their bed. I am with you if you'll have me, and I'll break their blazing heads. Now, look here, exclaimed the captain to the stranger from the bush. Now, look here, suppose a fellow was to split upon the push. Would you lay for him and fetch him even if the traps were round? Would you lay him out and kick him to a jelly on the ground? Would you jump upon the nameless, kill or cripple them both? Speak or else I'll speak, the stranger answered, my colonial life. Now look here, exclaimed the captain to the stranger from the bush. Now look here, suppose the bleeders let you come and join the bush. Would you smash a bleeding bobby if you got the blank alone? Would you break a swallow chinky, split his garret with a stone? Would you have a mole to keep you, like to swear off work for good? Yes, my oath, replied the stranger, my colonial oath I would. Now look here, exclaimed the captain to the stranger from the bush. Now look here, before the bleeders let you come and join the push, you must prove that you're a blazer. You must prove that you have grit. Worthy of a gory bleeder, you must show your former bit. Take a rock and smash the window. And the stranger, nothing loth, took a rock and smashed. They only muttered, my colonial oath. So they swore him in and found him sure of aim and light of heel, and his only fault, if any, lay in his excessive zeal. He was good at throwing metal, but be chronical with pain, that he jumped upon the victim, damaging the watch and chain. Ere the bleeders had secured them, yet the captain of the push swore a dozen oaths in favour of that stranger from the bush. Late next morn, the captain, rising hoarse and thirsty from his bed, called the newly feathered bleeder, but the stranger wasn't there. Going quickly through the pockets of his bloomin' bags, he learned that the stranger had been through 'em for the stuff his mole had earned. And the language that he muttered I should scarcely like to tell. Stars and notes of exclamation, blank and dash will do as well. In the night the captain's signal woke the echoes of the rocks, caught the gory bleeders sloping through the shadows of the blocks, and they swore the stranger's action was a blood-escaping shame, while they waited for the nameless, but the nameless never came, and the bleeders soon forgot him, but the captain of the push is still laying round in waiting for that nameless from the bush. Yeah, that was written by Henry Lawson in 1892. There was another version that was published 8 or 9 years later called The Bastard of the Bush. And it's full of, those general Australian expletives like fuck and the other one starting with C even. And so it's, I'm not going to do it tonight, but it's definitely worth a read. And some people say that it was actually written by Henry Lawson and released anonymously 8 years later because he had an aversion to cursing and swearing, or because he was a bit of a mummy's boy. True thing, actually he was a real wuss. But hey, he was a great writer. That's my opinion on him. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up now, aren't I? Yeah. All right, Skye Campen. Skye's coming up with a rugby song and she's going to take them off.
Well, I was thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yay!
That's the height, right?
I'll do one I sort of put together a little while ago. I don't know if it's like totally together, but anyway. It's called My Earth is Water. Like the water she flows, like the mountain he grows, for every step she gets closer. He is strong, he is bold, his embrace she will hold. The connection so grounded. With all his surroundings caressing her boundaries, testing the limits. The taste of her waters quenches his thirst that cannot be faltered. Through his fingers she flows, branches out in the glow, sowing seeds from the growth. Through the hardest terrains, her softness remains. They bring luster to life, the growth of pure light, the unity we all come to be. A poem I did, well, actually, this poem I actually wrote while I was walking barefoot at George's property. It's called Barefoot. And barefoot. Walking, stepping to and fro, stone by stone I softly go, watching rocks that roughly flow, reds and yellows, orange glow, warmth beneath and round my toes, the sun so warm I almost doze. Grounded to the earth am I, see the dust and soft dirt fly, stepping neatly, stepping shy, so the sharp stones make no sigh. Stab of stone, I'd jump so high, pain so sharp, I'm sure to cry. Laying on the path I meet, black snake, sunny, wanting heat, pops her head as though asleep, slithers off in grass so deep. Beauty black, she was so sleek, mindful thought was absent bleak. My focus was not on my feet, walking barefoot out of beat. That stone shot up and loud I bleat, looking for a comfy seat. Beating down the sunlit shone, even with my barefoot shoes on, that stone would shoot up hard and strong, yelling, cursing, loud and long. And Kookaburra laughs his song as kangaroo just bounced along. So when you're going for a stroll, no shoes, barefoot sole, take the time to mind your steps and be kindful, mindful depths.
Thank you, Skye. All right, very good. I think I got two more left in me. Two couple that I've written myself. I might even put them to a bit of music. Skye's heard them before, but hey, this one was written. Got the music again. For my son. And you might want to listen to this. This is so cool. This is like one of the best, and it's about a flying giraffe. Let's begin with this one. Well, Julius Giraffe wanted to fly, so he plotted, planned, calculated and applied, but no matter how much he flapped his legs around, Julius Giraffe never got off the ground. Julius Giraffe decided to see if he'd fly like a bird if he jumped from a tree, but Julius Giraffe wasn't a goat. His chance of climbing a tree was quite remote. The baboon yelled out, "Julius, giraffes can't fly, no matter how much you try and try. Julius Giraffe, you've got a long tongue, very long neck, long legs you can run across the savannah and the wide plain. A giraffe isn't meant to fly, I'm just saying a giraffe isn't a bird, it isn't a fish, nor is it a bacteria on a lab petri dish, or skinny giraffe legs aren't built for flying. Give up on your dream before you die trying. Give up on your dream, you'll never make it." Well, Julius Giraffe wasn't looking out, didn't see the poachers lurking about. Next thing he knew, Julius woke up in a cage on the back of a poacher's truck. He cried for his family and the baboon and the rain on the plain. During the monsoon, he was stolen from Africa, taken away, put in an aeroplane and he flew that day. The moral of the story is, get this, be very discerning for what you wish. The plane suffered engine failure and went into a dive. Well, the pilot found the parachute, bailed out. He wanted to stay alive. What's going to happen? Julius Giraffe was in luck and found the last parachute. And he wingsuited down. He flew through the air, glided with birds, he did a loop-the-loop, and his voice was heard yelling, "I'm a flying giraffe! I'm in the sky! Fantastic, amazing, I'm a giraffe who can fly!" Well, he landed beside the baboon and the tree. I didn't give up hope on my dream and I flew free. It was unexpected. I didn't have to try. I never gave up hope. I got to fly because I never gave up on my hopes or my dreams. They came true in the most unexpected way it seems. I'm a flying giraffe. I didn't die. My dreams all came true and I flew in the skies. It's Julius, the flying giraffe. He flew through the air, glided with birds, he did a loop-the-loop, and his voice was heard yelling, "I'm a flying giraffe! I'm in the sky! Fantastic, amazing, I'm a giraffe who can fly!" It was unexpected. I didn't have to try. I never gave up, and I got to fly because I never gave up on my hopes and my dreams. They came true in the most unexpected way it seems. The flying giraffe. As I tell everyone, that was written for my son, not Luca. Well, Luca Julius. That's his second name. Actually, it was the only name that I could find that sort of had a sound like Jerry Giraffe or Gary Giraffe. They were all taken in the children's books and stories and what, but there was no Julius. Now this one was written, and then I went and found the music after I finished the last word of the song. It's Tchaikovsky's Arabian Dance from the Nutcracker Suite, this music. And when we have the second tambourine, first, I shall begin. There it is. In the far eastern desert is a house made of tin lids. And a hillbilly goat farmer with 27 hillbilly goat kids. There's Alexis and Braden, Caden and Dave, Ed, Frank, Greg and Harry, the goat who's learned how to shave. And that hillbilly goat farmer said to Ignatius and Jim, where is Kim, Liam, Mary, Nola, Orville, Peter and Quentin? Meh, meh. Roger replied, meh. They're with Sally and Tom, watching Ursula and Victor put silly goat hats on. Meh. Warren spoke up, meh, and said, I'm here with Xavier, Yolanda and Zachary, but number one is your favourite. That hillbilly goat farmer, in a house of tin lids in the far eastern desert with 27 hillbilly goat kids, said, well, when I ran out of letters, I wasn't sure what to do. Kid 27 was named 1, and 28 will be named 2. I'm a hillbilly goat farmer in a house of tin lids, and I keep a good eye on my hillbilly goat kids. And number 29 will be named Tree. And number 30, Tchaikovsky. Thank you very much. And that's Wednesday Words, our open mic and our poetry night here at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. Thank you, Ian. Skip the ads. That's Wednesday Words, our open mic poetry night here at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. Thank you, Ian, Baylis, George Neo, Skye Campen, Thundercloud, audience members, and everyone else. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.